Hey life groups, or should I say blessings to you. We're in the second of a two-part video series about a way to share the gospel called B.L.E.S.S. This is a part of who we are as a church, and B.L.E.S.S is actually an acronym. It stands for 5 simple missional practices that help us to share the gospel. It's all about using the relationships we have to help share the gospel with those who are close to us but far from Jesus. What I love about B.L.E.S.S is that it's not a specific formula or 5-step process. It's just 5 things that Christians do as we live out our lives. It's about a lifestyle of following Jesus that means we're on mission all the time. It means looking at every part of our lives, especially the relationships around us, as potential opportunities to help people know Jesus. Last time, Hannah gave us a great intro and looked at the first 2 letters. B, begin with prayer, and L, listen. Tonight, we'll finish up with the E.S.S, eating together, serving in love, and sharing our story of the gospel in our own lives. Before we get too far, let's start with some discussion time. The next letter in our acronym is E, which stands for eating together. And who doesn't love eating together? This is my favorite of the letters. When we think about making space in our relationships for the gospel, eating together is one of the most impactful tools that we have. Think about it with me for just a minute. Have you ever had a meal with someone and found yourself feeling a little closer to them afterwards? I'm talking about an intentional meal. So putting the phone down and actually talking and spending time together as you eat, instead of just scrolling in silence while you both consume food. Maybe your family makes a habit of having dinner together. Maybe you've been out for dinner with a life group leader or a teammate or good friends. I'm willing to bet that most of us have experienced this at least once or twice. Sharing food together really does help us build relationships. In Student Min, we have this phrase we say a lot: food fosters fellowship. It's the reason we spend so much time in student ministry eating food, whether it's dinner at S&L or snacks at life group, or maybe even the way that 11th and 12th grade groups get to have dinner at every life group night. It's all because food fosters fellowship, meaning that sharing food together helps us break down walls and really get to know each other better. There's just something about food that has the power to make space for deeper relationships. Jesus even modeled this in his life. So many times in the Bible, we see him going to eat with people. He even invited himself to dinner at the house of people he'd only just met. In Matthew 9, Jesus eats with a tax collector. He goes to his house for dinner, and some of his other tax collector friends join them. And the Pharisees got really mad about it. They got mad because in the ancient Near East, sharing a meal meant more than just consuming food. It signified a relationship and friendship and connection. The Pharisees were mad that Jesus would show friendship to sinners and tax collectors. But Jesus knew that these relationships would make space for sharing the truth of the gospel. Sharing meals was a place they learned who he was and saw that he cared about them, and he invited them to follow him. In Matthew 9, the tax collector happens to be the very same person writing the book. Matthew, the tax collector, became Matthew the apostle. Now that's an amazing example of the power of food to foster fellowship. We all have to eat. So what if we thought about sharing meals as an opportunity to grow relationships and make space for people to know and experience Jesus? Shared experiences help us build connections. And those connections make great opportunities to help us help our friends know Jesus. Because it's in a relationship that we can truly know someone and they can know us, so that when we share about Jesus, they'll be willing and ready to hear what we have to say, because that's what friends do. Eating together is a shared experience, and it's a really powerful one. We could also add other things here, things that help us connect, like sports or dance or playing games. Anything you both like to do that would help you build connections. So let's stop here and take a minute to discuss how eating together can be a part of sharing the gospel with our friends. The next letter in our acronym is S for serve. And when we look at the life of Jesus, we'll see that if we want to bless the people who are close to us and far from Jesus, then we have to be willing to serve them. And when I say serve, I mean doing something for the benefit of someone else. As we begin with prayer and listen and eat with the people around us, we'll begin to see ways that we might be able to serve those people. Maybe it's helping with their chores or bring them a gift or a snack. Maybe it's letting them borrow something they need or giving them a ride. Serving means putting someone else's needs above your own. So what are the ways you might be able to serve the people you know? When we serve others, it does three things for the gospel. It shows how the gospel impacts the way we live because it demonstrates what it looks like to be surrendered to Jesus and put someone else's needs first. Next, it shows that Jesus cares about our physical needs too, because we're helping meet someone else's needs, physical needs. Finally, it invests in that relationship by demonstrating that we're willing to do something difficult for the benefit of the other person, shows that we care about them. Jesus himself was called the suffering servant. In his life and ministry, he was constantly looking for ways that he could serve those around him. Imagine that, the Son of God himself, coming not to be served, but to serve other people. Jesus even washed the disciples' feet as an act of service and a physical demonstration of the cleansing power of the cross. If Jesus served the people around him, then if we want to see our friends start believing in Jesus, we should be looking for ways to serve them. And as we serve those around us, it is going to give us opportunities to share about the way that Jesus has impacted us and how he might be able to impact them. Before moving on to the last S, let's stop for some discussion about serving. Our final practice in B.L.E.S.S might be the most intimidating. Share the story of the gospel in your life. When we imagine sharing the gospel, I think it's easy for a lot of us to think we have to jump right to sharing the gospel in really awkward or intimidating ways without first building a relationship. What this approach shows us is that by building a relationship through listening, eating with each other, and serving others, we're actually making space for the sharing and receiving of the gospel, as long as we see our relationships with intentionality for this purpose. It's true that sometimes God makes space for the gospel right at the start of a relationship, and that's awesome. But sometimes it takes time. If that doesn't happen as the first thing in your relationship with someone, don't be discouraged. God moves in his own timing, and he will open doors for that conversation. We just have to be on the lookout for those opportunities and ready to share when they come. Until we see these opportunities, we should keep living out those other practices as ways to help us create that space. We should continue in prayer, listen and ask good questions to get to know people, share meals and experiences, and serve the people around us. As we do these things, I know that God will make space for us to share our story. And when God makes the space, we also know that the Holy Spirit is present to apply the truth to our friends' lives. We can't change anyone's heart, but we can confidently share our stories and trust that the Holy Spirit can and will do just that. One of the really unique and impactful things about this approach is that the S doesn't just stand for sharing the gospel alone. It stands for sharing your personal story of how the gospel has impacted your life. If you're talking to a friend, they'll be willing to hear your story, even if they don't know Jesus yet, because you're their friend. They know you and care about you, and they know that you care about them, so they'll care to hear your story. It takes boldness, yes, but when we share our personal stories, it gets a lot easier and a lot more powerful to the person listening, because it's connected to our real experience and a real person who they care about standing right in front of them. As we start to wrap up, I want to look at ways to get really practical about how this can look. So here are two really helpful things we can start with. The first is that we have to make space to bring up spiritual conversations. How do we do this? By asking good questions and helping direct our casual conversations into something more meaningful, to spiritual conversations. Imagine I start by asking my friend how their day was. Maybe they say it was hard and overwhelming because of all the things they had to do. Maybe they also share that things in life are so chaotic, it feels hard not to be anxious. We can thank them for sharing that and then share with them how we face similar things. I might be able to tell them the way that my faith in Jesus helps me not to be overcome with anxiety when things feel out of control. I would tell them that, knowing that Jesus paid for my sins and promises to care for both my now and my eternity, that's a hope that keeps me grounded, even when I don't understand what's going on. Our faith in Jesus should impact every single part of our lives, our decisions, how we handle challenging things, even our hope and priorities. So we should have plenty of examples to share about how the gospel helps us when we go through difficult circumstances. We could even tell them that we know Jesus offers to do the same for them. Our friends will appreciate that we were willing to share this, and they might even start asking more questions about how they could have the same kind of hope in Jesus. The second practical tip is that if we want to share our stories, we have to really know them. It might be hard to tell someone how Jesus affects our lives if we've never really stopped to think about how that actually happens. And we need to know of some helpful ways to share our story in just a few sentences. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes long. In fact, it probably shouldn't be. Instead, I like to think about these 3 categories to help me collect my thoughts and effectively share my story. 1, how the difficult situation felt without Jesus, before Jesus. 2, how did I come to believe in Jesus? How do I know who Jesus is? What changed in me? How did I experience him? And then 3, how knowing Jesus has helped me get through that difficult situation. If we can have some of these answers thought out, then as we engage in relationships and conversations, we'll be ready to share in faith when God creates those opportunities. So let's close our time tonight with one more set of questions as we think about what this could look like in each of our individual lives. You do that, and I'll see you next time.